to 1995 when WCW announces they're going to be live and head-to-head with Monday Night Raw with their new program, WCW Monday Nitro. Bruce, when the announcement was made here, was anyone in Titan nervous? Because it feels like this would have been something Vince would have kind of laughed off.
No, we did not. We did not like them moving to Monday nights to go head up with us. It was a major network in TNT, and TBS was basic cable. The other thing that TNT and Turner had was nationally, they were a part of every single basic cable package with every major cable carrier in the country. USA, a NBC Universal property, was not. So while USA, for most people across the country, was a part of basic cable, there were a lot of places that USA was on that next tier, and they weren't always a part of basic cable, and they weren't always included in the majority of cable carriers around. And especially this used to go up Vince's ass sideways, which was kind of funny. Sidebar here. When you would go and travel on the road, there were a lot of hotels, for the most part, back in the day, that they all carried CNN, and they all carried TBS and TNT, because Vince was convinced that Turner had this deal with him. Okay, if you want CNN, you got to take my other properties too. And so that kept us out. So Ted Turner had deviously done this deal to get in the hotels and keep us out. It's like, really? It just was funny, but it's you go through the airports, and for the most part, it was all CNN, and Turner had a monopoly on that news channel format for a long time, and for people to take, if they wanted CNN, they had to take his other properties, which was genius as well.
If you're into that kind of thing, we cover the details, all of it, and the history behind the very first Monday Nitro on our spinoff podcast, What Happened When, with Tony Schiavone over at MLWradio.com. Just look for the first Monday Nitro episode in the archives. Of course, Eric made a splash on that very first Nitro when Lex Luger jumped ship from the WWF to WCW. We've already talked about that here on our Lex Express episode. But much like Vince on Raw at the time, Eric was the lead announcer for Monday Nitro. And one of the things I want to ask you about here, Bruce, is one of his more controversial decisions at the time. He started to give away the results for the taped Raw show, Nitro being live, of course, and he thought this allowed the viewer to go ahead and have an opportunity to not feel like they were missing anything. I've always wanted to ask you about this because so many WWF guys at the time would say this was playing dirty or underhanded or unfair. What say you, Bruce?
Well, in that imaginary rule book that we had, it specifically says in there on Chapter 14, Article 13B, that thou shalt not give away the competitors' finishes of their show on your live television show. And they clearly violated that rule. No, it was considered underhanded and dirty, but I think that if the roles were reversed and we had the opportunity to do the same thing, we would have done it. Well, it was good business. Hated it at the time, wanted to kill him and skin the little motherfucker. But, it was competitive business shit.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I was ready to just crucify you about the way Vince would buy people's TV time out from under him, but you probably knew that was coming. Somewhere around this time, Vince starts to position himself as being in a war with Ted Turner himself. I've always found this interesting because Turner was somewhat hands-off when it came to WCW. So isn't Vince smart to position himself in a war against Ted Turner rather than Eric Bischoff? I say that because with Ted, Vince could kind of present himself as the underdog that someone could sympathize with and get behind. Whereas Eric Bischoff, clearly Vince was the guy.
Nobody knew who the hell Eric Bischoff was.
Well, there you go.
If you're going to be in a war with somebody and you're getting beat up and somebody's punching you in the face, don't you want to get punched in the face by the big guy? You don't want some unknown coming in there and be getting shots in on you. So the positioning was that this was Ted Turner, this was TBS, and this was a giant empire and a billionaire coming after this poor mom and pop company that, by God, we're a family company and we're just trying to survive here. We don't have the billions of dollars. We don't have multiple networks to just place whatever we want to put on at any time. So if you're going to get publicity and you want people to hear your story, are they going to listen to a story about, hey, here's this unknown guy coming in and he's making some noise, or are they going to listen to the story about the big bad billionaire that everybody knows and not the most popular guy in the world? Here was also a position where Vince could be
the babyface.
Almost a babyface against Ted Turner, because Ted wasn't the most beloved guy in the world amongst the media types.
The media types. Listen to
you know those people, that fake news, that Dave Silva fake news shit.
When did the hate inside of Titan start for Bischoff?
Probably
reading the results, signing Lex Luger.
I would say probably initially on the announcement of Nitro Live, going head to head with Raw, but it escalated definitely when he started with the giving away the results and that kind of just vehement outward aggression.
Why was the decision made to include Eric Bischoff in the lawsuit? Specifically, we're referencing the Diesel Razor lawsuit that Vince brought against Turner, WCW, and then he named specifically Eric Bischoff.
Because Bischoff was the one who negotiated those contracts, and he's the one that they dealt with. So they felt that he personally would be involved in that. They named everybody.
Bischoff is president of WCW by 1997, and WCW is thumping the World Wrestling Federation in the ratings and every other metric. Around this time, Bischoff is regularly giving speeches to the locker room and to the office that his goal is to put Vince McMahon out of business. Do you remember hearing about these meetings, and how did Vince feel about those?
Sure, we all heard about it, and the feeling was that, we've got to overcome, and that these guys, the feeling on our side, it was a war, and it was personal. So the feeling on our side was that these guys are trying to put us out of business. Eric wasn't the only one saying, I want to put them out of business. Vince on the other side was telling us they want to put us out of business.
Right.
Ted Turner wants to put us out of business. Ted Turner had made comments to Vince before about squishing you like a bug, and I'm in the wrestling business now, Vince, and bought me a wrestling company. So it was personal. It's all business, but yet it's still personal too. So both sides stirred that pot heavily there.
We should mention that the reason for this monumental overtaking of the World Wrestling Federation should probably be credited to the NWO. And the NWO is going to be one of those things that people talk about for a long, long time. And there's actually something kind of cool going on right now on eBay that involves the NWO. Tell everybody about it, Bruce.
Well, that famous NWO chopper, the black and white chopper that Bischoff rode, he rode it at Road Wild in Sturgis, and there were two choppers made for the NWO. And they were made by the late Vinnie Bergman. I hope I'm saying that right, in Southern California. And there's one that Hulk has in his Hogan's Beach Club in Orlando, and the other one Eric has. And Eric is putting it up on eBay. It's the best offer, over $10,000. Part of the proceeds go to Secondhand Hounds Animal Rescue in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, which is a big charity for Eric. Dude, I've seen this bike. Been on the bike, never ridden it because I don't do that. But it is showroom condition. It's got like 5,000 miles on the damn thing. So it is essentially brand spanking new. He's ridden it a few times. He's kept it as a memento. And now he's selling it on eBay. And you can go over there and check it out on eBay. The NWO bike that was owned by Eric Bischoff. And we'll put a link to it on Twitter. I'll put it up on Twitter tomorrow so everybody can go there and check it out. But it's a neat little thing that Eric's doing right
It's
now.
the one they lowered down from the ceiling on Monday Nitro when he's on top of the bike wearing a crown saying it's so good to be king. He had it at the Road Wild pay-per-views, and a portion of the proceeds here go to Secondhand Hounds Animal Rescue. So go check it out. Put it in your Google machine in eBay. It's the 1997 NWO Chopper, personal property of Eric Bischoff that he's letting go for charity. So way to be a good guy there. And roll tide on that.